Good morning, everybody. Is it Friday? No, it's Tuesday. Oh gosh, I wish it was Friday. I got my push in this morning and feeling a little woozy, but I got my friends back. They are the regulars on the show, most regulars I have on the show. My teammates, Chuck Aoki, who is starting like year number 3 at University of Denver for his PhD, I think. He'll tell me if I'm wrong. But anyways, two-time Paralympian, won bronze in London, silver in Rio, a bunch of other awards throughout the entire thing. AAC rep, well-known Paralympian in the Paralympic community. And then there's Butler, Jeff Butler. He is heading to Stanford, which would have been this fall, but COVID ruined that. But for his MBA, and is a silver medalist from Rio Paralympics. We are going to talk about Rising Phoenix today, which just came out, and so we're gonna talk about that bad boy, Rising Phoenix. The stories in there. Maybe have some hot takes. But yeah, I'm just gonna bring these guys on. We'll rock and roll with it. As always, bring your questions, bring your comments, bring your concerns, bring your complaints, and we'll flush those down the toilet because we don't care about those. But what up, guys?
Great to be back, Joe.
Hey, having fun. You could have said happy September because it is September 1st today.
September 1st. This is different.
Oh, this is different. I kind of like it.
I feel like on this one I have to stay in the middle of my video or else you lose me.
Which one did I go to before? Ooh, there.
You're giving the people out there.
Yeah, that's not good. How's it going, guys? What's going on this fine Tuesday morning that I thought it was Friday already? I wish it was Friday.
It does kind of feel like Friday, but the theme of COVID life is every day feels like the last one. So every day could be Friday. Who knows?
Chuck has completely stepped up his game, and he's drinking Perrier out of a can.
Yeah. We got it testing. It's funny actually. We did a sparkling water taste test.
What's up, Hannaford?
A few months back in COVID. Very, very intriguing. If you're ever interested, I highly recommend doing it. It's a really fun exercise.
Oh, that'd have been great content. I'm surprised I didn't see it online.
My favorite one was Tehuacan. It's from Mexico. Very delicious sparkling water.
Where did Topo Chico end up on the list?
Topo was top in the top 5, but Topo, when you do it blindly, is actually quite strong. It's very bubbly. Very bubbly.
Did you do like a knockoff version at all? And
we bought like 10 different brands. So there were a couple like kind of like Whole Foods is just regular brand. There was a lot in there. And we may do another one. We've got nothing but time. And I am in my 3rd year of my PhD at University of Denver. So you were correct on that, sir. Well done. Very good.
Proud of myself for that one. So Rising Phoenix, we all watched it. I just finished it this morning. I was going to watch it last night, and then, life happened. And so I watched it this morning. So hopefully, I'm assuming we'll have a couple hot takes. Overall, 1 out of 10. What would you give it?
You going, Jeff?
Yeah, I'll go.
Looks like he's trying to go.
Yeah, I'm thinking. So like 10 is a masterpiece. 10 is the best.
10 is like one of the greatest movies ever made. And there's probably 6 movies in history that get a 10.
6.5.
Wow, that was harsh. I did not expect you.
7. A good movie is 7.
I guess that's fair. I would put it about an 8. I thought visually it's a stunning movie. I thought some of the cuts they did and the transitions they did were just beautiful. I mean, it really showed the sport and the bodies and the way they all intersect and work together, and the way it's like you use your body so differently to do all sorts of things. I thought it did that marvelously. I just visually, it was just a stunning film to watch, and I'm really happy about that. I thought, again, they really showed it in a beautiful way, showed it in a unique way. But yeah, I give it about an 8. I think it was really interesting, really good. Like I've said, we need more Paralympic content that is pure Paralympic content out there, and it is that. It's a beautiful Paralympic movie.
Joe, go ahead, and then I'm curious where we would compare it against Murderball. So,
okay, so yeah, I think 7.5, 8 sounds about right. I'd probably say 7.5 just for that, like the cinematography of the movie, the images, those are fantastic. And then it's also that, like, we just don't have a lot of Paralympic content where it's not, oh, News Channel 8's coming over to do an interview on Jeff, and it's a feel good story, and it's kind of the same thing all the time. Like, and so having something, especially on Netflix, for how big Netflix is and it's worldwide, is pretty important. But yeah, I think that question is pretty solid. Murderball compared to this, because it's there. I mean, it's apples and oranges. But what do you guys think?
I thought that Murderball did a better job of having a kind of consistent story arc, right? It was chronological. It followed Team USA from a crushing defeat to a rise to, you know, this kind of very traditional ebb and flow roller coaster of a storyline. And I think that Rising Phoenix attempted to do the same thing, but almost tried to fit too much in, was my feel on it. As far as spreading awareness, I think that Murderball did a really good job of kind of flipping what the stereotype of disability is totally on its head. I think that Rising Phoenix wasn't going for such the shock factor, and like wasn't trying to send the same message as Murderball. I would give Murderball, if we're doing the same scoring system, I would give Murderball an 8, and I give this 7 or 7.5.
Yeah, I think Joe, you said it. They're kind of different movies with different goals. I think Murderball, like you said, was really attempting to flip disability on its head. Like, let's punch people in the face. Let's put Mark Zupan. I love Mark, but let's put Mark Zupan on the head of a movie and let him just be Mark. And so that's what you get, right? Which is raw, real, unfiltered. And I think Rising Phoenix is really trying to show the beauty, the grace of the Paralympic movement, and the elegance of it, and how wonderful it is, while also trying to tell the story of the history of it, which is really interesting. I knew a little bit of it, and I've known some of it, but it's really nice to see it kind of put out there through Dr. Gutman and his daughter, and the story of kind of how it began and things like that. He's really a hero in my mind. And then it also is telling a little bit of the story of the Rio Games, which, to your point, Jeff, it kind of felt like we're doing too much. And I get that we want to tell all these stories and we're so excited. Like, look, the Paralympic movement has so much to offer. And it does. We truly have so much to offer. But instead of doing it all in, here's one piece, here's another piece, it's like, let's put it all into one. And it does come off as a little bit crammed in sometimes, because you're bouncing between this really amazing story of this guy inventing this because he wants to help people, to we're running out of money a day before Rio, to here's the story of these athletes. And it's all great, but it all gets a little bouncing around, right? Did I do something? You guys give me weird looks.
Your microphone got weird, but
is it good now?
Good now.
It's great now.
All right. So anyway, that's my take. I think they're different movies. I probably would give, with how I did it, I gave this an 8, so I would have given Murderball a 9 probably. I thought Murderball, but again, I think they're slightly different. Murderball was a doc really focused on the U.S. team. Let's show them. Let's do it. And it was effective in what it set out to do. I think the question will be, will Rising Phoenix be as effective as what it set out to do? And that ultimately would be how we judge this. I think Murderball has stuck, at least in the American context, very much in the cultural kind of milieu, if you will, and has really become part of it. And I'm hopeful that Rising Phoenix will do the same. I think it will. I think it has the ability to. The question, we just have, only time will tell that ultimately.
Yeah, I probably agree. I think Murderball would be 9, probably close to 9.5. I mean, like it really, and obviously, like you guys said, different reasons for making it and different pursuits of what they're trying to get across. But where Murderball was able to kind of cross that like sport is sport boundary, where it's on lists of like Rolling Stones every year of top whatever movies. And that's always on the list somewhere, and which is pretty amazing, because I think it did a really good job of saying, wow, athletes are athletes, which I think to an extent Rising Phoenix is trying to do the same thing. But but it was kind of interesting. The story arc when they started talking about London and how important that those games were, and then I almost felt like they moved away from that too quickly. Like even like within Wheelchair Rugby, like Riley said in the line, he really wanted to beat the U.S. in a final, and so like they didn't even show anything with Riley in London. They showed him in Beijing and then in Rio, which does a lot for like the body composition and how different he looked. But I thought, man, it could have been interesting to do a little bit more about like the buildup of London and how important Channel 4 was in London. And and they tried to go, I know Andrew Parsons had a line in there, and I was curious about what you guys thought. He had a line saying like, Rio, I think, was still the most important games ever for Paralympics, even though like, you know, the financial situation and some of the stuff that went on. What are you guys' thoughts on that? London, Rio, maybe even Beijing, like just with the Paralympic movement, obviously it's a growing thing, but like, was Rio a hiccup or was Rio a step forward?
Well, I think, sorry, Jeff, I'll just jump in here. Don't want to say about this. No. I think what Parsons is saying there, and I really think he's a great leader of the movement, by the way. He's clearly, because, you know, I didn't realize how involved he was with the Brazilian Paralympic team. They have a massive Paralympic program in Brazil.
Huge.
Like, they seriously do. It's very impressive. And he played a huge role in that. So much credit to him. We're lucky to have him continue to lead our movement. I think what he's saying with that is that basically, this is the answer. Every Paralympics is the most important Paralympics, right? Because as a movement, we have to keep growing every single time. It's not quite like the Olympics, where the Olympics is an established property, an established brand. People watch it every 4 years, 2 years, I guess. They know it's coming, right? Like it's this thing that's really in the worldwide mindset. And I don't think Paralympics is quite there yet, unfortunately. And I think that's what he's getting out of that statement is, look, Rio is the most important because we have to keep this momentum going. We have to continue to drive it forward. And I think that's very true. I think Rio was challenging in so many ways. You know, I think one of the big issues came up with Rio is, quite frankly, when they got awarded the games, Brazil was doing wonderfully. They were a country on the rise, you know, and then a lot happened in the world between then and 2016 that was both was in their fault hands, some wasn't in their fault. It was just the reality of it, and that led to so many of the challenges. But I think Rio, ultimately, there was a lot of good that came out of it. You know, they mentioned that Jeff, we were there the first couple games. There was hardly anyone there except for our families. Literally, it was empty. But by the time we were playing the gold medal final, I mean, you couldn't hear a word being said. It was deafening in there. So, you know, I think they illustrated that well. And I thought that was a really good part. They told that really honestly. They said, look, it started off rough. It wasn't good at start. We were worried, but it picked up by the end. The Brazilians, they were amazing. You know, I mean, the one time we went to the park, we were absolutely swarmed for like 45 minutes before someone goes, okay, we have to go. Like we will literally be here all day if we don't leave. And so they really did do a wonderful job. So I think Rio continued to drive it forward. It was challenging, but what it did show is that the Paralympic movement could face adversity, really tough adversity, and still succeed. And that is to me a sign of an organization that is entering a maturity stage in which you face a really critical, vital, almost existential crisis, and you survive it and move on and end up doing quite well. So I think it does show a step forward. I think we've all said this. I think Tokyo is going to be marvelous. You know, I think they're going to build on it. I think Paris will be great, and I think LA will be great. So, you know, I think that it certainly was difficult, but I do think that ultimately it ended up being a step forward and a demonstration of the Paralympic movement's ability to overcome.
Well, and what a better and more fitting challenge for the Paralympics, right? Like that is such a Paralympic thing, you know, overcoming adversity, all the, you know, the cliches, but it's true in this case. I don't know about either one of you, but when I was watching it, had no idea that the games were that much jeopardy.
I recall it being an issue. I recall kind of pushing it out of my mind, sort of like this year, honestly, where it was like, and honestly next year, where as athletes, it's in the back of your head, but you just can't worry about it. Because if it turns out we're not going next year and all the last 4 years we're down the drain, we have to act as though it's happening until the second we officially are not going. We just have to. And I think we as a team did a good job in 2016 of compartmentalizing that and saying, because I recall the articles coming out and saying, okay, this isn't great. Like, oh, this isn't good. I don't think I realized how dire it was either. And, again, so much credit to them for pulling it together. But it definitely was something I think we as athletes we have to just say, you know what, we'll deal with it if it comes. But for now, we have to act as though it's happening. We always do.
Yeah, it was mind opening to see. Like, you think because like when you think of Rio, you think of Zika more than like, hey, we're not going to have enough money to like run these games. And just to hear their raw honesty of like what was happening, and then going, we are going to find a way to get this done with these guys or without them. So that was really cool to see from like leadership of the Paralympic movement, which is obviously in great hands. And then the other thought that I had is, among others, is that 1980 Russia deal where they're like, no, like you crippled people can't come. And they're like, fine, we'll go somewhere else. I had no idea. That's 40 years ago. That's it. 10 decades ago, or 4 decades ago. Like 10 decades. Bad at math. I was a math major first semester. 4 decades ago, 40 years, which is so short in
the
context of it.
That's just not that long ago.
It's 40 years ago, a country said, you are disabled, so we do not want you. And I think that, and then it looked like some of the Rio money holders were just like, we're spending the money on the Olympics that matter, and the Paralympics just don't to us. And I think in the world, there's still some of that prejudice and still some of that, and some of it, honestly, I think even with like the Brazilian people, and they're like, we didn't know about this, but yes, we'll come to this. This is awesome. And they just like even the bocce ball athletes that were just going bananas, and they had a crowd just cheering them on, which to them, like, that have been their super, like, it's just amazing. But a lot of people just don't know about the Paralympics still. So I guess just as Rising Phoenix gets into the public, like what are you hoping people take away from that? Or the other question might be, is there still a job to do? Obviously there is, but like, is there still a job to do in America and around the world with educating people that disabled people can be productive members of society in kind of building and growing that bar?
I think it's interesting too, when we look back at history of, rights for people with disabilities. The ADA was only passed in 1990, right? Prior to that, it was, it wasn't Russia. We didn't pretend like we didn't have people with disabilities, but I can't imagine, and I'm sure neither one of you can, trying to live in a world without the ADA. And that is so recent. I think the entire movement of, support and rights for people with disabilities has a long way to go. You mentioned the idea that when people are exposed to parasport and our sport, wheelchair rugby in general, they're like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing. If I would have heard about this, I would have, it's always if I would have known about this, I would have watched, I would have been on board, I would have supported you guys, And so it's getting over that lack of knowledge in the sport that I think we still have to do. And it's a little uncomfortable for people, I think, when they first see people with disabilities and just in parasport in general. It's like, how do I feel about this? And so, I think there's still a long way to go. The one place that I think is really important that we explore as people with disabilities is employment for people with disabilities. I think we're lagging really, really far behind for a bunch of reasons.
Yeah, I think, Joe, to your question about what the takeaways is Rising Phoenix, hopefully, like you said, it's in Netflix. It's something that someone can stumble on and say, oh, I'll try this, or it gets recommended to them and says, do you like sports? Watch Rising Phoenix. I really hope the takeaway one is, as you've said, and I'd love to think of a better way to talk about this, but just the awareness and understanding that this is something that exists. It has fascinating stories behind it. It has a fascinating history to it. It's something that people are passionate about and care about and is real and has energy behind it. It isn't just the kind of like feel good thing. It's like, no, this is a high budget, high production. I think that's another thing that Rising Phoenix conveys really well is this is a big deal. This is not just, us getting together in our backyards to have fun. No, this is a 7-year planning process, $1 billion thing that takes an army to get done. So I think that kind of, I think one of the things I do hope that people take away is how real and how serious it is and how legitimate it is. And that to go with kind of like you said, just this general awareness and understanding that this is something that exists. I would love someday to have like a commission of people poll like Americans and just say, and the world say, have you heard of the Paralympics? What is describe the Paralympics? I'd just be fascinated to know.
Yeah, that'd be fascinating.
8% of the population know? Does 50? 10? I have no idea. It would genuinely be really interesting to understand what people's conception of the Paralympics are and its existence, because it's hard for us because in our world, basically everyone we know knows about the Paralympics or has at least heard of it because of us usually. Right. And so it's really hard for us to get outside that bubble and say, okay, because like I see people posting about Rising Phoenix all the time. And so I'm like, oh, it's doing great. And it's like, well, it's doing great in my network, which makes a lot of sense.
Right.
But really penetrating that next ring, and I think that's something that I'm really always really curious to see if it's able to do. But I think that's my biggest hope that it takes away is that people are really understand how real it is and just what a commitment and how much effort and energy goes behind it. And then, like I said, kind of the fact that there's real, interesting, incredible stories out there. I love hearing Riley's story of how his grandpa put him on a dirt bike and said, go, like, I think that's awesome. Like, I think kids with disabilities need that way more, right? People saying, go make a mistake. Joe, you grew up able-bodied, I'm sure, and Jeff, I guess you did too. Sorry, you just got hurt really young. Anyway, but your parents wouldn't have been like, "Oh no, you can't go." Like, I don't know, climb. Like, no, it's like you would have gotten to do that, and if you fell and hurt yourself, oh, whatever, you'll be fine. You'll bruises heal, scrapes heal, right? So I think kids with disabilities need that kind of energy more. You're allowed to go make mistakes, and yeah, you might get hurt, and maybe we don't do some things, but that sort of freedom and seeing how that can be so liberating for people, the way it was for Riley and for all the people really in the show.
It was, that it's such a beautiful point. And you think about it from a parent standpoint. I'm a parent now. And so like, even thinking about my kids getting hurt kind of freaks me out a little bit. But when when Paralympics normalizes your disability to the extent of like, yes, you have a physical disability or you might be limited in certain areas, but like you're pretty normal when it comes to your ability to go and try to achieve things. And the Australian swimmers, I believe her name's Ellie, her parents were so like distraught with themselves when they had to decide to cut her leg off because of the cancer. And they're just like, we thought that day we cut off like a lot of opportunities and things that, and to a certain extent, at face value, you go, yeah, like you're not going to be on, you're not going to be on the high school like volleyball team. But then there's Paralympians that like Katie Holloway, she was on like a Division I basketball team, stand up, normal basketball, Division I, like things. Those hurdles can be jumped over, but I thought it was pretty awesome when she kind of normalized it for her parents, and the parents are getting to see the Paralympics and go, oh, like you have some, like I have a neighbor across the block from me that their son is a year and a half old. He's blind. And I got to tell him about Lex Gillette and like was like excited, like, hey, like there's some people out here that are blind that are doing amazing things that like your parents can't do. Like it's that's like the beauty of Paralympics, I think, to a certain extent. But Jeff, what are your thoughts on like this? We talked about Riley's story a little bit, and what are your thoughts on? Sometimes I think Paralympians want to forget their story because we want to get like we're so like I don't know, energized by trying to be the normal, trying to be we're just as good as as Olympians, or what are your thoughts on maybe we need to tell our stories more because they're going to help out that parent, they're going to help out that kid. Like it kind of goes to the fact, like I was watching the film and I thought about Chuck's story, and like Chuck, like in your line of work, you tell your story a little bit, but like your story's like very unique and very fascinating, just much like Riley's, where you're born with the disability and you have to go through school, and like you were never going to be, you can never really dream of being Michael Jordan. and it had nothing to do with like you being short. Like it just like like you can never dream about that or look you can look up to like an able-bodied tennis player, but like that probably wasn't going to happen. And what Paralympics is doing now and growing it, and I've joked around with my kids, love like Chuck Aoki's a superstar, Dad. Like he's way better than you. I'm like, oh yeah, yes. But like I've joked around about that, but like being able to be someone's icon or someone's like goal or someone's I hope to aspire to be Chuck Aoki or Jeff Butler someday, because they can go, I have his disability or I have similar disability and I can actually do that because he's done it. Like that's, I'm hoping the message that people see. What are you guys' thoughts?
I like that a lot, and it's needed, right? We need people with disabilities to be icons for other people with disabilities. The inherent problem that I see in this, though, is where I think parasport is a lot right now, which is we are so inspirational because of our stories and discounted as athletes. And so it's a really tough field to navigate, I think, the way that we are right now, viewed from the public as stories. We are our stories. We are not athletes. And I think we need both. I just don't know how we would, or how the best way to balance both is right now.
So it's like the human interest side of it is 70%, and then the athlete is like 30%. Like if you're gonna put percentage,
if that maybe 10, 90, 10, honestly, like I feel like that's the way we're viewed today is 90% story, right? And the same thing I always do, where when the local newspaper comes and does a story on us, where do you see it in the newspaper? Not the sports section, lifestyle.
Yeah.
Well, and you don't even see the result of the competition in the newspaper, right? You just see that this event occurred, right? This is just something fun that's going on, not the national championships, right? You don't see that. Yeah. Sorry, did you have more, Jeff? Otherwise, I was going to.
Yeah, go for it.
No, I think, Joe, that's a really good question and a really insightful point. I think that in the movie, actually, at one point, Johnny Peacock says, he says, before 2011, all my interviews were about how'd you get hurt, your story, your story, your story. He said in 2011 and beyond through London, it was all about sport, sport, sport. And he makes that point. He's like, it was really awesome. He's like, wow, people just want to know about track and running and things like that. I thought that was interesting. I also thought it was interesting. He makes that point in a movie that is mostly about story, which is fine. Again, I think that's perfectly valid. I think that's what they set out to do, but I didn't think that was interesting. But I think Jeff has it right. It's a really fine line to balance. Olympics and Paralympics are always more about story than most of the other pro sports, mainly because they're just they don't happen very often. People, the joke is people don't really care about swimming in the U.S. outside of once every 4 years when they really care about it and love it, So I think it is challenging. But with that, there are swimming fans, right? There are people who follow swimming, who love to watch swimming. There are people who love to watch track and field. There are people who love to follow table tennis. Exactly. All these sports. And so I think the challenge that where I feel the biggest challenge and where parasport should spend a lot of its energy in determining is how to create real fans of our sports, people who will follow our sports in the Paralympic Games and really care about the results and care about learning the sport and wanting to just be fans and interested in the sport, and then follow it back to the domestic league and go to their local tournament and track who's the best team in the country and who's going to win national championships this year. I think that is something we really need to, because again, alongside with the awareness, all those things, I think that's the critical mass that can push us into this level of, okay, we're legitimizing the sport above the story. And again, it is a balance. I think there's always going to be a certain amount of, story to go with it. And that's fine. I think that's valid. I think people are interested in learning about how LeBron James, he grew up with a single mom and he became this amazing athlete. People are interested in that kind of stuff. It always gives more energy to it, but we have to find a way to balance it with our sports. And we have amazing athletes who do incredible things. And this is how they're doing it. So
Becky Lord. Hey, Becky, thanks for your comment. I think this is fascinating because it was probably the biggest part of London, in my opinion. But Channel 4 covered the Paralympics in 2012, and it needs to happen in all countries and all over the world, not just in the host country. that I think would have a huge impact on raising awareness, understanding, and support for disabled disability sport. I couldn't agree more. I thought it was groundbreaking, and it set the bar so stinking high for how media should treat people with disabilities. Because what they did, it was like a lot of times, I think I forgot what the name of the show was, but they made disability they normalized it by using humor.
The last leg. The last
Yeah,
leg.
the last leg. The last
The last leg.
and it was amazing. It was incredible, and it was kind of the other point of it too is we had that in London. You guys talked about Rio, where you're mobbed for 45 minutes. Like we have to go. Like we can't. Yeah, the last leg. Thank you. Absolutely. And but I remember that in London, we get off the tube in London, and people are like, "Can you take pictures with us?" And I'm like, looking behind us to see if is there a
exactly. Like, who are they talking to?
Us.
Talking to us.
Oh, we saw you on the signs, and we saw you and they did a phenomenal job of advertising it, and based off the Olympics, hey, thanks for the opening show or something like that. First, they're
thanks for the warm up.
Yeah, thanks for and. But then you go home, and I thought, in Rising Phoenix, Tatiana showed this really well, where she's racing through a town, and it's a ghost town. It was really well done, cinematically. But I've had that before. I'm sure you guys have had. I was out pushing my rugby chair the other day, literally yesterday, when I was pushing, and some chick in my neighborhood's like, that's so amazing, great job. You would never say that to a guy walking his dogs or running laps in your neighborhood. You'd never say that, but because you're in a wheelchair, you're like, oh my gosh, that's so cool, that's so amazing. And it's right back to people don't even know. That was 2004 that she was talking about that, but it's still in the US 2020, and people don't know what this show is still on each year now, really popular. Yeah, still on 8 years later. Francis, what up, Francis?
Hey, Francis.
Francis, hey.
Francis. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts? I think, honestly, is it something that, in our country at least, is it something that we need to start demanding more from the disabled community? Hey, we want representation. Hey, we want more media opportunities. Or is it, for them, I think they just said, hey, let's go buy the rights and we'll figure it out.
So I thought, Becky's comment, I could not agree with. Channel 4 really, like you said, was the linchpin that made it all work, right? It made it all work in the UK. It was just, their coverage was phenomenal. It treated sport as sport, treated it as real. We love you too, Francis. It treated it as so real. And the other part that was really cool is they had a lot of disabled presenters. Right, they had disabled people commentating. It was very, very visible. It's very real, and so very, very authentic feeling, I thought, which really helped as well. And NBC does that. They bring in former Paralympians to do most of their commentaries. They do a good job with that. But absolutely, I think that's what we need, is that kind of universal awareness and treatment of sport that really does it on such a, genuine is just the only word I can think of. It's sort of and we have the capabilities to do it, and it's continuing to get better every year, I think. But Joe, I think you're right in that there has to be a certain amount of demand that leads to action, right? This is why when they aired our gold medal game, I was telling everyone I could possibly think of over and over and over again. I was tweeting at all the famous people I know, at least a little bit tangentially, to say, please talk about this, please share this, because I'm saying we don't get a lot of chances to really demonstrate in a visible way. And that's the way we can do it, right? This is how we can demonstrate it, is we show that we want to watch this, and we talk about it, and we post this. And I think I say this basically every time I come on this show. And so I'll have to come on every week basically to continue to push this. But the biggest thing that our allies and friends and supporters in Paralympic sport can do is to talk and post about how much they like it. That's the best thing you can do, in my opinion. I can't, I promise you that those of us who are more engaged with the people involved, we're doing our best to push this, but that's what it is ultimately going to come from, right? And I think sponsors are really starting to get on board. Big time sponsors are starting to get on board with it. And so I think that's a huge step as well. But I think at the end of the day, it'll come from this groundswell of people talking about it publicly, and they're saying, wow, this is getting tons of interaction on social media. Maybe we should do this more,
Yeah, right. You're totally right. It's tough because I almost wonder, right? It almost makes me think like, okay, why do people watch sports, right? Like, let's go all the way back. Like,
Yeah.
what is going to get people interested in parasport? Do people watch sports because they grew up playing it? If that's the case, we got a problem, right? Because if that's
and World Basketball has a solution, but that's topic for another day.
Right. And so figuring out how to convince these networks, right? Is it like, to your point, Chuck, is it just, wow, people love this, we got to show
networks? It's convincing people, to a certain extent. It's both. Sorry.
It's both. Yeah. No, and it's hard. It's like a chicken and the egg problem, right? You can't convince a network to show it because they don't have any proof that people want to see it, but people don't even know they want to see it because they haven't seen it ever. And so it's this cyclical, and to your, like you mentioned, Channel 4 just like, buy the rights, let's see what happens. That's what we need someone like NBC Universal to do. Is like, we're just going to show it come hell or high water. Like, people are going to love it or hate it.
Oh, it's our boy Jay.
What up, Team TFA? What up, Jay? How can we engage the NFL audience on NBC to tune in next September for your games? Any creative ideas? It's a great question. I mean, obviously tapping into that. I think, especially for sports that aren't, we're rugby, but we're not rugby because the sport's completely different. But I think similar to sled hockey, obviously they have a hockey following because it's on ice and they're on sleds, and it's very similar games. But I think for our sport specifically is highlighting the fact that we're crashing into each other pretty much every play. It's a physical sport. It's a really physical sport with a lot of strategy involved, which obviously we all know. But creative ideas to engage the audience. Honestly, a lot of it has to do. I know, Jeff, you don't like it as much, but like there has to be human interest stories in there. Like Bob Costas for 30 years on NBC, before Mike Tirico took over, like he told human interest stories in the Olympics, and then for like 5 hours for the Paralympics. But like that's what sells Olympics. It does. It just does. But so that would be. It's got to be like really good promo, even more so than like Chuck, you holding puppies. Like Chuck can actually tell a story.
I have a puppy here I can hold now, though.
You got plenty of puppies now. Yeah, you have your own puppies to hold. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think you're right. It's a great question though from Jay. I'll have to think about that a little bit. It sounds like though you do have another great guest though to bring onto the show soon.
Yeah, exactly. I'm wondering if we should do Jay. You want Jay by himself or Mallory and Jay? Mallory by herself.
Jay on the spot. Man.
That's 3 shows. I can do Jay, Mallory, and then Jay, Mallory.
All right, I've got some real questions now.
All right. What you got?
I'm a Paralympian. I would like a pet cheetah.
What?
The South African sprinter. I would like to get a pet cheetah. Was that his pet cheetah?
I think it was CGI'd. I think.
I would say
he really has a cheetah.
Done, Jay.
I don't know.
I
thought it. If he really has a pet cheetah, that's what like the coolest thing I've ever seen.
I think it was more of like a cheetah in the wild, and then it's the parallel between like he's running fast and the cheetah's obviously running fast.
Okay. That's question number 1. Question number 2. You're Riley Bat, and now there's a statue of you somewhere in the world. What do you do?
Who's Riley Bat? Me or Joe? Or wait, were those real statues?
Were those real statues? Ooh, I thought they were like clay or something. Or like rubber.
They were real. I thought they were just like created for the camera, and they look cool. But
Jay, can you find this out for us?
What? Okay, what do we do? What would I do with it? Would they give it to me? I don't think they.
I would like to operate under the assumption that those statues, whether they're made of stone or clay, are a physical object that now exists in the world.
I mean, I would think that Australia, he should be in like every Hall of Fame possible in that country because he's one of their greatest athletes of all time. So I would assume put it there. I don't. That's what I would do with it if they made a statue of me. I don't know. I've never pondered what I would do with a statue of myself. I will admit this is a question I was unprepared for today. So
do you want a statue of yourself?
Do I want one?
Yeah.
That's kind of vain. I don't think so. I don't think
you put it in your house. Like that, you can't do that.
You absolutely cannot do that. Be like, no, God, no, that would be just the worst.
Yeah, in your you can't do it in the house.
You can't have a statue of yourself. Like people build statues.
You want a statue of yourself.
You want a statue of yourself?
No, I don't. What I think was cool if there was a statue of me somewhere in the world in existence. Yes, that would be cool. Like,
Sure, that would be
cool. In my living room, probably not.
No.
The other part too is you have to consider a statue is just very large, and so it's kind of just like in the way. I would want it very publicly somewhere. Because the reason I say that is because I don't know if you two ever been to the FDR memorial in DC.
I'm not.
So it's really interesting because there's like the Lincoln Memorial, there's the Jefferson Memorial, all those things. When you go to the FDR Memorial, it's kind of tucked off to the side a little bit, but it's really cool. You go through it, and there's a lot of stuff about his life anyway. But the first one of him is him in a wheelchair, and it's super awesome, right? Like to see someone visibly disabled right there. First thing you see, it puts it in front of your mind. It's like, oh, this was a person with a disability. I think it's awesome. It really meant a lot to me when I saw that. And it's interesting too, because FDR actually tried very much to hide the fact that he had a disability in office. And so whenever they made this, the memorial, they said, no, we're going to put this front and center. And I just think that's awesome. So I think that the more visible disability iconography we can put out there, the better. Right. So that's my take on it.
Anyone that goes in the Olympic and Paralympic Hall of Fame now is going to see a rugby shirt.
They sure are. It is right there, front and center. Looks great. I have one other question I'll ask you guys about because a pretty good line struck me. I know we're running a little on time, but there was one line in there from the Duke of Sussex, aka Prince Harry, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's no longer his title anymore.
Oh, that's right. I'm not clear on what I will admit to not being super up on English monarchy titles. So maybe
anyway, Prince Harry.
He's no longer concerned. He's left. He's out. Anyway, he had a line in there where he was talking about the thanks for the warm-up kind of thing and all that stuff. And he asserts so forcefully that the Olympics are great, but the Paralympics are even better. And that's a line I've heard refrained from some of our most intense supporters who love the Paralympics. His support of adaptive sport is unquestioned. Right? That guy is awesome when it comes to it. But I'm wondering how you guys feel about this idea that asserting that Paralympics are so much better than the Olympics. It's way better. Personally, well, I'll let you guys say what you think about that.
I think it's disingenuous, right? I think that it is the wrong argument to be making and hurts our cause because people see through that. I think, right? I mean, the Olympics are the peak athletic performance in the entire world, unquestioned, right? So to inherently say that anything is better than the Olympics is just goofy and crazy, right? You can say, I don't think we should try to position ourselves as better than the Olympics because I think it reeks of like trying too hard.
Hot take. No, I think there's something there, and what he's trying to get across, I appreciate, and I think
I think the spirit behind what he's saying is fine.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people kind of take that route because our name is directly derived from Olympics, para meaning parallel to Paralympics. It has nothing to do with paraplegics, which I think everyone thinks at one point or another. I did before I even knew what was going on, but being in the movement for as long as we all have been, like our brand, I think, is honestly completely different than the Olympic brand, and that's okay. And like as we grow the Paralympic movement and go, the branding is just going to be different because of the nature of them. Like when you're born and you're 3, 4, or 5 years old, oh, you can be an Olympic athlete, whatever. And then people with disabilities can be like, oh, I can be a Paralympic athlete. But it's so different. Like my buddy that I went to high school with won a bronze medal in skeleton, small hometown, whatever, like pretty neat. And everyone's like, that's amazing. And then, but you're Olympian too. And I'm like, well, no, I'm not. I'm a Paralympian. And it's completely, what he did was completely different than what I did based on the stories of kind of how we got there. And I think the stories of how you get there are usually quite different too. Chuck, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think I'm on the same lines as both of you. I think that I think the best thing you said with Jeff, you said something about it sort of like it doesn't like it doesn't quite line up, right? Because it's like this isn't we're not asking to be superior to the Olympics. You know, what I would never make the argument we need to be superior to the Olympics. It's just sort of like, and I think the key is that the best way to get at what we are trying to convey about ourselves? And personally, I think the answer is no. I don't think that's the best way to do it because it does have that little bit of disingenuity to it. It's like where people will look at you and say, really? Like, really? Like, it's better than watching Usain Bolt run a 9.7. Like, really? Is there anything, to your point, Jeff, is there anything more impressive than that? The answer is probably maybe to a certain person, but overall, probably not, right? So I think, Joe, and then to Joe, I think your point is right on. It's like we just have a different brand. We're still sports, we're still athletics, and we're still excelling in performance. But the from where in which we all come from is so unique, and that's what really is so important, right? And what we convey so differently. You know, Olympians have incredible stories too, of course, but that's what we're trying to convey is different. So I just think that line is something that to me, it's always stuck. It always strikes me a little bit the wrong way. Like, is that really what we're trying to say?
Yeah. One more question as we close. Well, you were saying something that kind of piqued my thoughts on like, and then Jay's question too with the audience. And I think so with Americans, we're obsessed with a number of things, but when it comes to sports, comparing. We love to compare our sports. We love to compare what Ted Williams did and what Bryce Harper's doing. Like we love like numbers. And when it comes to sprinting, you talked about Bolt's record and him running. It was amazing. And so I think Paralympic announcers and the marketing can do a better job of going, like let's say Mallory swimming, like, oh, she just swam 50 meters in this amount of time. Yeah, it's not the Olympic equivalent, but she just did that and she can't and here's her disability and here's why this is like insanely impressive, right? Like if and with rugby it could be a little bit different because it's a scoring sport, but I think a lot of the sports that have times involved is highlighting what they did it in and why it's impressive. So like Tatiana McFadden, like literally one of the best athletes ever. And you go, oh, she won, marathons and this and that. And like, there's been some sports science stuff that they've done with how hard it is to shoot a basketball in a wheelchair or how hard it is to push a racing chair. Because everyone's like, oh, well, you get to coast and it's a lot easier. It's like, no, going uphill is like the worst thing in the world.
Awful. I tried it one time and never did it again.
Yeah, it's horrendous. But it's like she's won literally everything there is to win in racing, I'm pretty sure. And done it numerous times with some of the events. And so like promoting that and going, she has spina bifida, but then she's able to do X, Y. So like almost normalizing the disability and going, yes, she has this disability and this is what she's done with it. So it's become an opportunity for her to do incredible things. But I don't know, maybe marketing the timing of it more.
I am all on board with us needing to quantify our Paralympic sports more. I think that might be the path into what Jeff was talking about earlier is how do we bridge that gap between story and sport? I think quantifying and really having quantifiable numbers and things to talk about is what helps people, right? People talk all the time about someone in basketball scoring 30 points and they have no idea if they scored those 30 points efficiently in garbage time. It's like, oh, wow, this guy scored 30 points. That means something to people, right? I'm so on board for us quantifying our sports and better and using that because to exactly the way you said it, Joe, even if someone can't fully grasp what it means to have spina bifida or paralysis in the legs, they can understand that swimming 100 meters or doing a 400 in X time is impressive. People will get that even if they are like, oh, that's not as fast as the Olympic times. Well, it's like that doesn't matter. They'll get that. So I couldn't agree more about the importance of quantifying the sport because I think as we've kind of talked about throughout this conversation, is that brings it back to sport, right? That brings you into more of a sport type mindset than a pure story mindset, right? It's like it becomes less, look at how this person overcame all these obstacles to become a Paralympian. It's like, look at how these people overcame obstacles and look at what they're doing now. And here's how impressive what they're doing is in a very tangible way, right?
Yeah. Remember 2010 World Championships and they did all of the scoring statistics, like everything. like points per minute played, and so like you do that from class to class. When we were playing in the WWRC in 2019 and having our classifications in the back of the chairs, I always hated that, and I go for the public audience. I actually think it's a really, really needed thing because wow, Jeff Butler just threw the ball and he's inbounded 25 times and he's got a success rate of 95%, and other low pointers in the tournament are at 50%. This is how good you know what I mean? Like, so like it's really easy to go, this is why he's good compared to other people in the tournament. And it really, or, you know, with Aoki, he's a 3, but he's scored 75% of his team's points compared to other 3-pointers, or Joe's touched the ball 100 times more than most 2s touched the ball in a game, whatever it would be. So like it can be where, and people go, I don't really know what the sport means, but that must mean he's pretty good because he's doing this compared to the other people in the tournament. But yeah. So Jay, we're gonna need you to get some statistics for us, some records, some numbers, and pitch it to NBC. That'd be perfect.
Boom, done.
Let's go.
Yeah. Boom goes the dynamite.
Well, guys, thanks for coming on today. Awesome conversation. If the audience hasn't seen Rising Phoenix, go and watch it. And go and watch it over on Netflix. Tweet about it, share about it, anything that's Paralympics related. In this next year, tweet about it, share about it, Instagram about it. Just hit a like button and a share button, and it helps the athletes that are competing tremendously. That really does. Any closing thoughts, guys?
Nope, you couldn't say it better. Watch the movie, talk about the movie, you know, just continue to talk and continue and engage. You know, that's all we can do. We're less than a year out. So here we go.
Love it.
95.
I don't know, Josh, that Japan against Japan in Rio would say otherwise.
He wouldn't because he caught it.
I guess he caught the ball.
Josh, shouldn't you be in school right now? Man's going back. Yeah. Hey, for more about USAWR, check out usawr.org. Go on to Instagram. You can check USAWR out at USAWR, at JW14, at Chuck Aoki, and at Jeff P. Butler. Boy, the best 0.5 in the game, boy. Over on Twitter, USAWCH Rugby, at Joe Delagrave, at Aoki5, Chuck, at Jeff P. Butler. Boy. All right, guys. Thanks so much.
Hey, guys.
We'll see you. Have a good day, everyone.